right. One of the things that we talked about as a team when we put this symposium together was trying to find somebody who could actually have a macro perspective. We're a bunch of academicians, which is great, but there's a lot happening in the business world when it comes to AI. And so my brother Ed, and call upon him, he mentioned to me there's a wonderful 3-part series that he was participating, watching from Rehmann Group. And he mentioned how informative it was and how helpful it was in framing kind of the dynamics of what's happening in the business world and kind of the future of AI. And so I was able to reach out to Rehmann and in particular talk to Brent. Pruim, he is from Rehmann. He's the Director of Innovation and Change Management. He's responsible for the firm-wide innovation and digital transformation strategies. This includes collaboration with clients, firm leadership, and advisors to develop and execute client and associate technology strategy. So I can't thank him enough, especially at the end of the day on a Friday. I think he said, yeah, a tough spot to be in, right? I know. And by the way, all the presentations have been amazing today. So thank you. Let's give a round of applause for everybody. And there's no pressure on you, Brent, at all here. So none at all. So here you go. So yes, keep going. Yes. So without further ado, here's Brent. Thank you.
Thank you for that warm introduction. Where I like to start is just before I get started, I do want to say that I do somewhat regret taking the 2:30 spot on a Friday after listening to all this today. And but honestly, I'm excited to be here because I like to try to bring a perspective that you might not always get, right? You might not see the business side. You might not see what's going on in these different areas. So I'm really excited to be here. The other thing is I saw people from Baker College up here presenting, right? I'm a Baker College graduate. So of all things, they're part of the organization that's here today, and I'm from there. Now, I'm also a Michigan fan. I'm a Go Blue guy because that's what my grandpa told me I had to do. These guys' presentation was great. And actually what's so interesting about what they said is exactly what we're seeing in the business world as well. So I'm going to play a lot off of what they said because even though they're from Michigan State, it's exactly what we're seeing in the profession, in the CPA profession, and they actually nailed it. So I'm actually quite proud that they came here and did that because Michigan's approach to what they're doing and what he was talking about, we're seeing our big four, our competitors do. They're spending billions and billions on building their own models, and they're already out of date. So let's just buy what Microsoft's going to give me. So here we are. There are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. I think we've all seen this from Lenin before. I think it's really important to realize that just so happened in the last year and a half. We just saw a decade of technology come out. Again, I'm Brent Pruim, Director of Innovation. You heard everything there. You saw my bio. Again, I'm from Baker College as well, but I've been with Rehmann for 15 years. I've been an auditor. I've been a tax preparer. I've been everything else that you can imagine there. I'm currently in the corporate office, so they call me overhead now, I think is what they call that. And so I don't keep as much client work as I used to, but I still do have a chargeable component to my role. I also do IT general control testing at colleges of all things. So that's so weird that I got asked to come up here today. So I've seen the internal control systems of your technologies, given the background that I have and the clients, and some of you are clients of Rehmann. So I appreciate that as well. So we're going to talk about how did we get here. We're going to talk about change management because I don't know how ever at Rehmann we came up with this big long title called the Director of Innovation and Change Management, because you would think that innovation and change management probably shouldn't be in the same sentence, right? Because the innovation is the idea generation and change management is how the people actually getting the work done, right? And actually having something to follow. When I thought about this presentation, I wanted you to be able to take away some of the things about empowering faculty, administration, and what you can do for your students. I just continue to think that how important that is, and what am I seeing in the business world? What do students need today as they come into the business world, but not maybe just the business world, because I know what I want as a CPA firm or an advisory firm, but I also know what not-for-profit wants, because I get to go out there too, right? I get to go out there, I get to see what they're doing. I get to see what a medical billing facility does. I get to know what a medical practice does, what a dentist does. I know what they need too. And so I've seen this, and I wanted to share some of those experiences as I've gone through this. What is going on with AI at organizations? So that'll be part of that process, and I'll go through it as quick as possible because I'm a talker, and when you give me a mic, we could be here till 10 o'clock. So I'm going to go through it quick. I'm going to flash through some slides real quick, but I'm so proud of the presenters that went right before me, because practical use of AI, I can skip those 25 slides now because you did exactly what I was going to do to show how easy you can get started. And I can already see the maturity levels of what you may have called it prompting and chunking and all those things. I just generally call it prompt engineering, and you just need to know how to do it this day with this type of technology that we have. So let's get rolling. So let's start with story time. Oh, I love story time. So I'm looking at this picture, and you can clearly see I created this with an AI generated program. I use Copilot at Rehmann. We have them all. We don't restrict the use of all of them, but because Copilot's in our Microsoft suite, we're able to put a little bit of a layer of protection, even though that these guys alluded to, like, they don't really put it in their terms and conditions what that protection is. But we're able to at least put some guidelines around it. But this is just a general one. There's those other Soras and things like that, and these other applications that are out there. And I just asked it, I said, you're a professor at a university, weird. And I said, you're telling a story to, the future generation. And so that was somewhat what my prompt was, some give or take a couple words, right? And so you saw it did a pretty good job, right? And so the one bird has one eye. This has got two eyes, and it's a little tweaked. The kids' expressions are a little off. But what have you been hearing about Gen AI, right? You heard things like bias, right? Bias. Where's the bias here? Well, they all are Caucasian children. You have a Caucasian professor. All the ones, right? I heard some of you say the ones on the ground all have glasses. Well, why is that? Why do you think that? It's a bias thing, right? These are biases that are happening based on the models and the things that it's been trained on. So it gives you a good illustrative way to see how these biases are going and how they're built in. But honestly, it did a pretty good job. I couldn't have drawn that, by any means. And our marketing department's pretty good, but I'm just going to say I thought I was pretty proud of myself. So anyway, but with story time though, also I want to tell is, so back in 2010, I was a manager in kind of the audit space. And I had we'll protect the innocent. His name was Charlie, maybe. And what he did is we were out at a client. And we walked out to the client. We were auditing the accounts payable, and that's just a list of what they owe their vendors, right? What they owe people. And I said, Charlie, go get a list of what they owe, the accounts payable, all the vendors, and then come back, and we'll make some selections. I'll kind of show you how to do that, and then we'll get some invoices and go on with our day. And what Charlie did is he walked into Roger's office. Again, it's a longtime client of Raymond's, been 20, 30 years. They pay their bills. They never question things. They're a really great client to have. They're the client you want to have. And he comes back from Roger's office, and he comes back with 40 pages of paper. And he goes, hey, Brent, I asked him for an AP aging of all the list of balances, and he just sat there. He pulled it up on the screen in QuickBooks, and then he printed it out on a laser jet printer in his office, and then handed it to me. And he's like, so what do I do with this? And I'm like, this is like 2010, right? And he said, I'm like, oh, Charlie, you know what you're going to do? You're going to scan a page at a time right into that scanner that's sitting next to you. And then you're going to try to run a little OCR, object character recognition, on it. And then you're going to start doing some sampling forms and make some selections for the invoices. And he's like, oh, this is just not what I signed up for. This is not what I learned at Baker College. They told me I could do all this cool thing here. Auditing's fun, right? And he sat here, and I just had that moment with Charlie. And I sat there and I said, well, he's a good client. He's like, can I just go back in there and tell him? He had it on his screen. Can he give me an Excel, a PDF, something? And I said, well, Charlie, I don't want to damage the relationship here. He just printed 30-some pages, so he's going to be probably a little angry if you have to go back in there and ask him to regenerate something. And I don't want to anger this client. So sorry, just that's the way we do it, right? Old school, that's just the way we do it. And so he goes through this process, but it really hit me that day. And that was the day I sat there and I said, okay, So I'm somewhere between this Gen X and millennial world that I live in today. My Gen X mind was saying, get this done, just scan it and get it done today. But my millennial mind was saying, Charlie's got a point. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, why are we even taking the time of that? And from that day on, 14 some years later, I'm still telling that story because that was my kick in the butt to get going, right? It was like, we got to do this stuff. This is ridiculous. Why are we even doing this in 2010? So I tell that story because it's really important to think about. Just remember, just 14 years ago, probably at some smaller firms and things of that nature, just 4 years ago, 5 years ago, they were doing that same thing. They were still printing out this paper, scanning it in. If you're doing that at your organization, that's okay. It's okay. Don't worry about it. You'll be okay. I promise, because you're still in business, right? So it's a good thing. But ultimately, we empowered, right? So as they were talking about the timeline earlier, back in the end of 2022, we empowered the end user with AI, right? With Gen AI. Think about that a moment, right? That's why it's different. That's why we're thinking about it differently. That's why we're all trying to scramble on and figure out how the heck we're going to deal with this, right? And so when we talk AI, I think we've all just started to use AI as the term, but we're all talking about Gen AI. And I was actually pretty proud of the presenters. They kind of flip back and forth, but I think that's just because it's now in the end user's hand, we're talking about AI, right? That's why we use the word AI, but it's really not. I mean, it's AI, but it's actually just a glorified large language model. So ChatGPT, I think many of you have seen a lot of this information, but it really trained pretty fast. Remember when I was talking about Charlie, there wasn't any GPT anything, right? And now here we are. And even just in probably early 2021, I wasn't even talking about these types of things. What's actually quite interesting is I was doing presentations at the MICPA and the AICPA and other organizations around the US. And they wanted me to come and talk about cryptocurrency and blockchains. And I'm up here and I'm like, yeah, blockchains, like this is the thing, smart contracts, it's the future, right? And here I am now later talking about the future. So really just weird for me. But ultimately, when I walked out of those blockchain presentations in 50 minutes, whatever they may be, I had to get in my car to drive home and I'd be like, none of these people are ever going to touch this stuff. They need to know what it is. That's fine. But they're never going to use a blockchain. They're never going to actually program a blockchain, not my audiences at least. And so why ChatGPT, why Gen AI is different is because guess what? You now have it in your hands and you now have that power. So this company, right, OpenAI, they gave you the power, they pushed the button. The innovation director does that a lot at a place like Rehmann, right? He's just like, just push the button, see what happens, right? Like nothing could go wrong, right? Like nothing, like don't worry about it. So that's what happened there. And really what we did is we became natural language processing experts, and we're all, or at least starting to be in our worlds today. We took this and turned it into that. I heard the speaker earlier talking about conversation. Right. And like, oh yeah, I forgot I can actually like chat with it and talk with it. That's how it was designed to work, was for you to chat with it and talk with it, not copy and paste, right? We're in this paradigm. We went from a search engine world that we are all getting pretty good at doing search engines and searches on Google to now we're into an answer engine world, right? We're an answer engine. And so this paradigm shift is going to take some time. And we all know if we ever hit the I'm feeling lucky button, we never got what we wanted, right? So that I just don't think it's so hilarious that it's still there today, I think. But it's one of those things where we do things differently. We went out to Google, we Googled it, right? And now I'm in a room with a bunch of PhDs and scholars, and we're talking about research papers and stuff like that. Well, yeah, your students were Googling the answers. That's what they were doing, okay? And that's okay, though, if they understood the rules, they understand the framework, they understand the critical thinking and how they were going to get to the answer the right way to be able to do it. So I loved what the presentation earlier about talking about. So why does Gen AI feel different? We can finally touch this thing, this magical black box that we never were able to touch before. That's something that I never thought we would be able to touch. I'm just going to be honest, to being kind of a futuristic type of person. I knew that there was some of this AI being developed over the past 5-10 years. but I really didn't think they were going to put it in the hands, right? What they were going to do is the Microsofts, the Googles of the world were going to control the whole narrative. They were going to give it to you how they want to give it to you. And then they were going to charge you $50 a month per user for it. So the AI CPA is where I stole this slide from. I mean, borrowed or whatever you call that nowadays, but I sourced it, right? Is that correct? Did I do the right thing? I got a bunch of PhDs and teachers. I sourced it. So the guy that was talking about this and was actually put it really well is, remember, we haven't been, this isn't like, it's new to us because we have our hands on it now. And so we're being forced to figure it out, but it's been around forever, right? You got the Alan Turing test, you got the machine learning that came along, and we've been doing machine learning for quite a while, the world, and then ultimately deep learning. But don't forget, we had these little tastes of AI all the way around, right? We had narrow AI, and we had these different areas, which I'm going to talk about now. AI terminology cheat sheet. This is just here for you to have. I mean, I'll send my slide out. I'm not going to cover all these in absolute detail, but I want you to all not be scared to talk about these terms, because guess what? OpenAI pushed the button. So, right, we have to talk about these terms now. And when your students are talking about it, or your lecturers, or these people that you're listening to, you really need to have a one sentence answer, a chat GPT answer, if you will, to what these things are. So artificial intelligence is that broad general AI. And that's where this like old conversation goes back. And people like this example or not, I don't know. I guess I'll ask this audience, but they talk about Steve Wozniak from Apple. He came up with his way to kind of describe what autonomous general AI was. And he said, we know we've arrived with robotics, autonomous general AI, when it can what? Go in and make a cup of coffee at anybody's house. Okay. So if it can go into a house, know how to make a cup of coffee, find the water, find the stuff, do what it needs to be done, then we're at that point of, for the people that are my age or older, we're at Skynet, right? We're at that point. Okay. So we've arrived. And when it comes to that, what's kind of scary is we're not too far away from this, right? So with self-driving cars is the best way I like to look at a general AI. It's making human cognitive decisions. It's going up to streetlights. It's turning. It's looking, oh, no, somebody with a bike came. It stops. It hits the brakes and it goes through. All doing that while searching Sirius XM or whatever your perfect station is that you want to listen to while you're doing it. So complex situations all going on at the same time with no human intervention. Narrow AI, we have to kind of back up, and this is where I tell the story of like my 8-year-old, right? So my 8-year-old goes up, and he's an Alexa just fiend, and he gets up there, and he's like, Alexa, Alexa, he's like, play me this song. And what does Alexa do, right? Remember, it's narrow AI. Where does Alexa try to play the song from? It tries to play it from Amazon Music, which Brent don't got that kind of money, so we ain't paying no $15.99 a month for no Amazon Music. So my 8-year-old is just like, Alexa, play this song. And it's like, ooh, I found that on Amazon Music. Would you like to purchase for $15.99 a month? And it's like, it's very narrow and it's programmed to be that way, right? And what happens here is my 8-year-old has learned now that dad says you can't say yes, right? You can't say yes and purchase it. So he now has done critical thinking, right? He's problem solving. He's figuring it out. He changed his prompt to said narrow AI. Hey, Alexa, play this song, not on Amazon Music, but on YouTube, and show me the lyrics. There you go. Bam, free music. I don't got to pay no $15.99. And my 8-year-old figured it out. All right. My 8-year-old figured this out, like just to work around the system. My 8-year-old is prompt engineering and not even knowing that he's doing it. But that's what narrow AI is, right? It's really simple. It's not going to really probably get you the answer you want. And it's programmed to probably sell you something along the way. But machine learning, Jim Karp is one of my colleagues, and we were talking about this 30-part series that we did. And he's just such a great speaker, one of my mentors over the years. He led the digital transformation and strategy at Rehmann for the longest time, handed me the reins recently. But this was his example, and I can't thank him enough for everything, but I don't like email spam filters as an example for machine learning. I just don't, but this is his, so I got to give him the credit, right? I'm supposed to source and quote all these things, right? I learned at Baker College there's something like ABA or MLA, and I have to like put these little footnotes or something at some point. But anyway, this is a good example of machine learning. It really is. And ultimately what it is it's really these algorithms, and they're just churning through data, trying to figure out what the anomalies and what the patterns are. So my example, because it's a business world example, what do I do today? What are my clients doing today? These guys asked that question, so I'm going to answer it. So what did we do? Now, when I'm auditing a client, or I'm doing a tax return for a client, a business client, not a normal, individual, we are now at the point where we can connect to the ERP system, the financial accounting system at a client. We can automate when we want to push the data into our systems. We then can use algorithms that I definitely didn't build. I just purchased them, from people that I trusted and vetted and did all my security reviews on. And I run and churn it all through that database, right? Or through those algorithms. And then it risk scores me. This transaction looks funny. This transaction looks right. That's what I like to call machine learning, right? Because over time it's learning and it's trying to figure out, and it's the programming of those algorithms to give me a result of what I want. Deep learning, this is where we start to get into a little more the image recognition, right? We're talking about the deep fakes and being able to feed things with speech recognition. And so these are the types of things where I can, for 15 seconds, lead in, give me my answer and go through it. And the speech synthesis and the natural language processing. But before we talk about that for just a moment, the neural network is really what we need to just understand. This will make it so, and I'm going to try and break it down as simple as possible. This is how all of this works. What is AI, right? Remember, back to general AI. We want it to mimic, to impersonate, to be a human and express cognitive activities, be autonomous, all of those types of things. So how did they train these large language models? How did they train all these AI things that we have today? And this is just the best way to look at it, is a neural network. Well, what's the brain, right? It's a neural network. I'm not a medical professor, so whatever it says on the camera. Again, I think I said it earlier, this is when I go off script, and these are, the disclaimer is that these are my personal opinions and not for the camera, not the opinions of Rehmann or its affiliates, because I am an auditor, have a legal somewhat background as well. So that's my disclaimer, that I'm going to go a little bit off script, that these aren't Rehmann's views, but these are mine. So what they did here is they built, like your brain, a bunch of transmitters. And so think about it. When you have an image that you see in, so I'll just green tie guy here, right? Sean. So he's got a green tie. Well, why do I know that's a green tie, right? Why do I know that's a green tie? Why do I know that this guy talking to you right now is very bald or going bald, right? Because he's got young kids. And what's going on here is I'm processing those images. They're going through all the things that I've learned over my years and taught by the great professors throughout my years and my teachers. And then ultimately it's giving me a conclusion, right? And then I can use that conclusion to continue to critically think and think further and go down that rabbit hole of whatever rabbit hole I want to go down to. That's what they've tried to mimic. That's what they tried to train. That's what they've done for you. And that's how they built the large language models that they have today. So for the tech professors, did I miss anything? Pretty good. Okay. All right. So he's like, I got him about 60%. He's like, yeah, all right. Like, you did all right. For a CPA, you did pretty fine, good. So, but ultimately that's where the natural language processing came, right? It's conversational. They built this thing to be conversational with you. So don't be afraid of that. Also, large language models. Again, now we have the really backbone of the natural language processing that we layered on top of the large language models is really where they've gathered all that data. And I think what you heard earlier, like where did they get all this data? And they basically just read the internet from the beginning of time, right? That's a pretty good place to start, right? All the way to 2021. Am I right? Am I getting it right here? Is basically how they program this. And yeah, a dumpster fire. That's fine. Right, exactly. And so that's what they did. Okay. And so when you think about it and where we're going and what we're seeing and in the future of AI is, well, it can do all of that and faster. It can do it in a matter of minutes, hours, past how much computing power you want to put behind it nowadays. So they did stop in 2021 for ChatGPT and some of the other ones because they just didn't want to, they didn't know what they were doing. And plus they hit the black box, push the button, right, and made it happen. So they didn't really know what they were getting into. But that's how you got to where you are today, right? You have the ChatGPT, you have these things. I tried to keep it simple. They probably would have had me go in a little bit more detail about the nodes and how those nodes then turned into other things, but we're good enough for today. This is something that we teach. And so this is probably more for the administration, the organizational level, the board members. If you're a board member in the room of any of these institutions, is really this is the process to success of AI. If you're going to do it internally and you're going to try to put it into place at your institution. And when I'm talking about full AI, I'm talking about the things I talked about as I went through those cheat sheet in those areas. Everybody, all the business that we talk to, what do they say? That was that fear of like being behind, right? They're competitors. They don't have a competitive edge anymore. They're going to freak out. They're going to lose their business. You're lose their market share. What happened is they go right to AI. I need that AI. I need that AI. Well, all they really mean is they just need some Gen AI training. They need some engineering, and they need to put some guardrails, policies, whatever you want to call them. I love the way these guys did with the ethical, kind of value statement approach. Really good. But if you're going to do this at your organization, you need to start with the data. It's getting a lot better with unstructured data these days, but it still needs a lot of cleanup. I trust you. I've seen your IT systems and your databases and your data warehouses are kind of a hot mess. And so it's just kind of what we have. And I'm saying the same thing about me, right? I'm saying ours is too, right? Our client databases are. And so being able to organize that and put it through all these different steps is really where you're going to get the advantage of how you start in this space if you're going to get into the full world of AI. So I paused there only because for some reason I went out and certified myself as a change manager. So with that, what happens is we're all in this huge change right now. And I want to start here before I get into change management with that all of you are in the exact same place most of the businesses are today. They're just trying to figure it out. They're just trying to put together the framework of how you're going to use this in your business, how you're going to use it in your institution, what's going to be the layers of governance that you're going to put around it. So yeah, we may be a year and a half after they push the nuclear codes out to the world, but we're all in the same boat and we're going to be okay. You're all going to be okay. So don't be afraid. We just need to start thinking about it. But if you're going to do it right, why is it important to have change management? I didn't get to see the speakers before lunch because we're auditors. We just come for lunch and then talk afterwards. But basically what happens is that you have this current state that you're in right now, and then you have the transition state, and ultimately a future state for success. Well, if you have change management, that goes pretty smooth for you. If you have something, you're following those principles and you're following that training and you're following this. I know it sounds like common sense, but it needs to be said sometimes about how important change management is in the process. Because when you don't use change management, you have a current state, a really bumpy transition state, and you ultimately end up with what the Swiss cheese effect. Now, were you successful? Yes, you were very, very successful because you know what you had? You probably had a project manager, right? So let's just start to talk about with the difference between a project manager and a change manager. You had a project manager, which their goal is to get you to the end point, right? And I have a project managers that work for me. They're PMP certified people, and they are my lifeblood in line to what I do every day. But they're there to be the taskmaster to make sure you get to the end goal. If you layer a change management philosophy and change manager on top of it, now you're thinking about other things as you go through the process, and you're ultimately getting into what we call the people side of change. Because I don't care if the board of directors or the administration at your place or whatever it is, or the IT department is telling you that, oh, we're going to do this or we're not going to do that or that sort of thing. If your people don't want to change, you aren't going to change. It's not going to happen. So you have to really step into the people's shoes. Now, as I said, maybe without a change manager, you were still successful, right? You were still successful. And I'll self-admit myself here as well as I go through this for the next 3 minutes, is at an organization like myself at Rehmann, we have the same problem, okay? The problem is we're really good at coming up with ideas. Okay. And we're really good at project management to get ourselves to the thing. And so we do our evaluations of it. Let's just use a technology, right? A new technology. Maybe it's a new curriculum creator. Maybe it's something like that. We get this new technology. We go through the process. We vetted it out. We looked at all the different vendors in the market and we said, oh, this is our one. I wrote the check for $100,000. It's supposed to be applicable to, well, let's say it's, 300-400 people at a firm my size that it's good. They're going to use it. And what happens? You roll it out. IT walks away. Yep, we did our job, right? Project manager's like, yep, checked all the boxes. We got all the boxes. We're all good, right? And then here's Brent left holding the bag, right? Of like, why a year later, after we spent $100,000, I got to go to the owners of my company and tell them why 8 people are using this program. 8 people. It's adoption. It's about sustaining. It's about keeping things going. And that's the importance of change management. So I'm a pro-sci trained person, certified change practitioner. That's where the source is, because remember, I'm supposed to do that. And it's all about the people side of change. So I'm not going to belabor this because I think it's just, I've probably already did long enough now, but it's about preparing your approach, managing your change, and sustaining. And you saw during that transition state of when you're going to your current state to future state, which you're all doing right now with Gen AI, and even in little different cohorts as you go through your different areas. What did Michigan State have? 17 colleges, or that break that down. Each of them even has their own little change cycle going on and how they're doing it. And don't get caught up, as they talked about earlier, into the individual one-off examples, right? We go to those 80-20 rules, all those types of things when we're going through this process. Is you're going to have to adapt while you're managing that change. You're going to have these bumpy roads, and there's going to be times when things aren't going to go exactly how planned. And it's an iterative process. It's a circle. It just keeps going around. But ultimately, if you put a change manager in place, you will sustain your outcomes, and you ultimately will transfer ownership to somebody else than me that has to hold the bag. It's going to be the people that hold the bag, and they're going to be the ones that are invested. They're going to be the ones that want to do this. They're the students, they're the faculty, all those things that want to incorporate Gen AI into what they do. There's a little bit about their roles, which I think is so super interesting at a financial and higher education, institute, because who are the sponsors? You got 17 business colleges. Who are the people managers? Is it the administration? Is it the deans? Is it some other term I heard earlier today? And who is it? Who are these people, and who is going to assume these roles so that you're changed into Gen AI and is effective and important? And ultimately, when I sat back and I thought about it, depending on the size of your organization, your sponsor is probably going to be your board of education. And then there's going to be people on that board of education, because they're the ones that are executing and making that change. Those people need to be visible through this whole process as well. So that's my challenge to them. And then the people managers are probably going to be those school of business, the school of engineering, they're probably going to be the people that ultimately manage that. The administration is going to pull on that, but it's going to be a real change agent side of the world. And I already saw all the change agents already getting ramped up in this area. So coach, manage resistance, because that's important, and advocate, and you will get there. So we talked about project and change management. You got to continue to challenge yourself. I like the Michigan State approach of the safety, the confidentiality, the way they built their policy, if you will. I heard somebody say, I want policy. Well, yeah, I want policy. I want people to tell me what to do too. But did we tell you what to do with your computer? Yeah, we told you can't go to this website or that website, or you can't do this when you got a computer back in whenever that was ago. But you just learned it, right? It just happened. So how are we going to empower? Now, I use some terms here. These are my terms, not Raymond's terms, so disclaimer. But ultimately, when you're faculty, you're educating yourself, you're playing around with these tools, and you're being collaborative. That's how you're part of an organization like this, so that you can talk to your peers and your other community college. And that's how the importance of an organization like this. Critical thinking and problem solving, I can't say it enough. I don't know how we're going to get there without it. We have to be able to critically think and change. I'll skip the implement AI in the classroom, because it sounded like that wasn't a good thing to say earlier. And then ultimately was that's the cloud people, right? And so solicit feedback though, and improve your content, and manage resistance is really the key here as you go through that process. Administration. So here's some tips and tricks for preparing, managing, sustaining is educate yourself. And this is where I want to talk about a little bit about your vendors. Okay. You talked about they come knocking on the faculty's doors. They come starting to infiltrate into your place. And what are they going to do? They're going to sell you the latest, greatest, shiny penny, awesomest thing that they ever saw. My story here is we have a vendor, be careful here, a vendor that we use that we spend probably $100,000 with a year. And I would say we have about 400 users on this said research. It's a research platform. They called up and they were hot. They were like, yeah, we got AI integrated into our program. Well, for research, that's pretty powerful. So show me what you got. They do a 15-minute demo and they show, oh, look, see, you can search about case law of a legality or something in a certain state. And it right at the underneath it, it came up with like a sentence or two summarizing what IRC code 7216 is and how that's applicable. And then it just gave you the list of links that it normally would have in a Google world or in a research world where you're on your own and you use your brain and your education to go through. And they were like, see how powerful that is? And I'm looking, and I got like 2 tax partners on this call too, because I'm not going to pretend that I'm a tax research expert by any means. And he looks at me across the Zoom call, and we kind of looking at each other, and my little IM pops up, and he's like, "You're not buying this, right?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not buying this at all." He's like, and so I was like, "Why don't you ask them a question?" And so he says, I kind of already know what IRC 7216 is, so I didn't really need you to summarize it for me in one sentence at the top of my search result. So good try. And no, I'm not paying an extra $20 per user per month for your extra AI infused thing. So I do have a musical background and a drama background. So I'm going to use this middle section here for those of you that will catch that reference is be in the room where it happens. Be in that room. Sit with those vendors. You have preferred vendors that you work with. You're going to struggle to sit in the room with Microsoft, okay? They're going to be tough to sit in with. You got Salesforce or something like that. You're going to have a tough time sitting with them in the room. But you know what? A lot of the financial apps and things the administration uses, whether it's Illusion, whether it's Banner, whether it's Power Fades for financial student financial aid, if it's Genzabar, whatever you're using, sit in the room with them, okay? Because they have to listen to you. And if you can get the power of purchasing power and a group like this, an organization, and you all sit down with them, which I think most of you use Genzabar or Banner. And so what it's going to do is give you the power and actually see and have a voice in that room as it goes. And then the student impact, I think we're just so in tune with our students, but faculty need to understand what the needs of the students are. Do they need that? Do they need that technology? Do we need to purchase that technology or not? What do we need to do there? Administration, do we need to equip those students with the faculty with the technology? I heard that a lot. Like, yeah, we're going to be okay with ChatGPT here. We're going to be with it there. It's probably ChatGPT out of all the ones we've tested is the fastest and gives you the most comprehensive answer. Again, here, I'm going off script. But ultimately, I think where we'll land if I had to pull out the AI future today and use my big crystal ball, I think we'll probably end up in the Microsoft platform at some point. They've invested billions of dollars to connect to the large language models that Microsoft or that OpenAI has built. And I think if I had to pull my crystal ball, that's where we'll probably land because guess what? In the business world, what do we use? We use Excel, we use Word, we use PowerPoint, we use Outlook. We're not using Gmail. Okay, so you're probably going to be stuck with that in the business world, and that's probably what we'll end up is in the co-pilot space. Also, for the students, we need to remember Charlie, right? We need to remember Charlie. And Charlie was a great kid. We found somewhere else for him to be successful, so he's no longer with us. But what he did was he made me think, but also over time, he gained an arrogance to him. And that was very frustrating for me. He would come to me and be like, you guys are so far behind. If I go to Ernst & Young, they're doing this stuff. They've been doing it for 20 years. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Like, whatever. If you like to work 80 hours a week, not have any family life, I'm sorry. But if like, what do you want to do? Right. And so it was one of those things that it really became a situation where, the arrogance was there and the respect wasn't there. And so be part of the solution. Don't be continuing and whining about the problem if you're not going to be part of the solution. Quickly, What are our motivations for this? Why did OpenAI push the open box? What's really crazy about what they did is they built this awesome large language model and layered natural language processing on it. And what did they do? They gave it to everybody for free. Isn't that crazy? Like, who would have thought that? So now we have Microsoft coming in for $30 a month per user. They wouldn't even let anybody that wouldn't buy 300 users at first even use their Office at the beginning. Luckily, they brought that down. Otherwise, at Rehmann probably wouldn't have spent, $300,000 a year to buy that type of investment. But consumers demand fast, accurate responses, and it all comes into employee satisfaction. I have people coming from your institutions today into my firm, and they're like, do you got that one program that we learned in that one class in accounting? And I'm like, oh, I sure do. And so they come and start looking at it, and that gets them excited, right? Now they're part of the process. They're part of the learning, and you're doing the right things by giving them those types of tools. And we call it high tech and high touch when we're talking about our clients. We want to give them the tools to get us their stuff fast, to be able to process and get their work done. But we cannot stress the value enough of some type of natural, human interaction that's going on there. That we're humans. We weren't programmed many tens of thousands or whatever you believe years ago when we were created to interact with computers. That's just not how our genes are working, and that's not how our DNA was ever programmed. So the human element is very, very important. And whatever that was talking about, you're giving awards about that hybrid kind of world where you can come in or not. That's how we operate in business. That's what I'm seeing our business people do. Unless you're making widgets or there's a reason for you to be in there, or you're working in trades or something like that, manufacturing, you're going to be in a situation where that hybrid is going to be the future of how you should be doing it. So it sounds great that you're doing that. Check my time. Oh, sweet. All right. I got 2 minutes to get through this. So small organizations still very low in their maturity level from what I'm seeing. So what I'm seeing out there is they're just really not there. Why is that? They don't have the capital. They don't have the investment to build their own large language models. What did we see out in the industry right away? Is we saw the big consulting, the Accentures and the big firms out there. They started to invest millions and millions and millions. And to Michigan State's credit, University of Michigan's like, oh, we'll spend a couple million on building our own large language model. Well, guess what? They're already outpaced. I mean, Microsoft has blown them away already with their OpenAI side of it. I mean, even the Claude AIs of the world, and even the very biased Gemini of the world can also beat them. I mean, you can't do it. Now, are you sacrificing security? Yes, you are when you're going with the commercial side of it. So it's going to be really important as you go, especially with the things that we do and we touch. To get in that. But if you're going to get in the small organizations, they're just thinking about this stuff. They're just thinking about Gen AI and how their people can use it. They probably don't even know that their people have open AI accounts on their domains. They're also using probably still some legacy basic cloud apps for different administration, different things that they do. They lack the resources, and they definitely don't have any internal controls. I can tell you that. So mid-sized organizations, and that's where I kind of put the Rehmann firms of the world. I put a lot of the people in the room here. You're not maybe this multi-quadrillion dollar institute, but you're definitely somewhere in not the small one, and you're probably not the big one. So you're somewhere in between, right? And so you're embracing it, and sector agnostic, what we're seeing, they're embracing Gen AI. They're working on their data. They're cleaning up their data so that they can get into these models and be able to use it and capitalize it, right? So our not-for-profits and things of that nature, they're not really doing that. They're probably spending a lot more time with their mission and purpose, right? Is to serving the populations that they have, granting money to what they need to do. But they're going to probably start to see it build into the programs and the vendors that they buy it from. So that's what the mid world is going on with the not-for-profits. The for-profit world, there's a lot of resistance because of privacy. There's a lot of resistance to, I'm not going to answer your plagiarism question or anything like that. I have no idea. I don't know if it's plagiarism or not. I really don't. But I do know at least that my Copilot versus my OpenAI ChatGPT gives me references. And as we've been kind of common theming, you have to footnote your references when you're doing things, I guess, when you're talking about things before you take it as your own personal opinion. So that's where I think we're going to see the mid-sized organizations end up. The large organizations aren't going to stop. They're just going to keep building, spending money, doing what they do is spend money well. That's what they do. And they're going to have a lot of good integrations. They're going to have no way to control it. They're not going to still remember to have change management, and they're going to need to really help establishing their documents, their policies, and how they build that in the future. So this is the other side of it. I like to get into a little bit of industry side of what I'm seeing. Marketing teams. So what are they doing? They're using Gen AI to create marketing. If they're not, then they're behind. Okay. They're behind. That's what people are doing. Social media, same thing. You're behind. Okay. The challenge is, though, this is one of those big things that come out in the last couple of months that I've been really losing a lot of sleep on. These guys lose sleep on certain things. I lose sleep too. I lose sleep on, remember what we did when we had a new professor coming and he said he had all these credentials and this awesome, resume or whatever it may be. What did we do? We hopefully checked their Facebook pages and we checked their Google them, right? We Googled them to see if they were actually who they said they were. That's how we proved their existence and their accolades. People are going to start using these types of tools to check people's reputation. They're going to start to see, when you search, what's the top 5 community colleges in the state of Michigan, right? They're going to see that. They're going to start making decisions based on that. So we're all going to have to start understanding, especially in a marketing standpoint, why is it responding the way it is? And of course, when you're in a capitalist America business world, is just like Google, when you search what's the 5 best community colleges, is whoever invested the most money with Google, bought the highest plan from them. That's how you get to the top. That's what they call SEO. And so search optimization, that's how you get to the top. So how do we get to the top of the Gen AI? I don't know. Like, I'm still trying to figure it out, because when I asked for the top 5 CPA firms, it listed a CPA firm that's a one-guy shop in Saginaw, Michigan. That's weird to me. Like, how is he the top 5? Where's me? Like, where's these other ones? Like, I was a little angry. You can tell I was a little hurt about it. So ultimately, reputation and those types of things are going to start to come into play with these types of tools. So be on the lookout. But marketing is using them. Learning and development. This is like what we just bought at Rehmann about, I guess, just bought like probably 4 to 6 months ago. I don't remember the name of the vendor. After lots and lots of vetting, we're doing all of our quick, on-demand, like 2 to 5 minute trainings using an AI generated program. So basically, you feed in these objectives, these talking points, you give it the knowledge check questions, because many things you have to be like NASBA certified and they have to take an evaluation or whatever it may be. So you give it the knowledge check questions and it pulls up, you tell it, do you want, Sally's voice or Johnny's voice or what ethnicity, what race, whatever you want, and you plug it in there and it does the whole presentation for you. We do that today. I just been starting to review some of these just from a trainer and a content generator that I've been for a long time at Rehmann. I'm still kind of getting over the human thing where he does talk a little weird and his arms move as he's going through the points. So I'm still trying to figure out how to interact with my AI counterpart now, but ultimately that's what we're doing in the world. We're doing that. We're doing it today. It's all about picking the right tools. I think I gave you a little lesson on that earlier, is just don't jump in to something because somebody said it's good. Do you vet it? Be in the room where it happens. Talk to your vendors and work with them. What was it? In February of 2023, there was 8,000 or 9,000 new AI businesses incorporated in the United States, all in 1 month. I think it was October, maybe August or October. I did a quick search of how many of those still exist. I think it was like 28, so don't jump in too early on some of this stuff. That's why you're at the perfect time, because that hype cycle's kind of gone up. We're down in the little trough of illusion or whatever it's called, and we're getting there. Finance, automation, focus on automation, can't stop, integrate it with your current apps. And the beauty of something like Gen AI, another benefit, is now you're not relying on the IT department. I won't say anything to the IT department, sorry, but it's a good thing. So it helps us move faster. They don't have the resources, they don't have the time either. So we need to be able to work together with them. But make sure you're User acceptance, you're paying attention to the data, you're paying attention to sensitivity. Information technology, I couldn't give you any benefit or challenge because they are focused on everything and it has a benefit. I feel bad with how fast that button got pushed because they got security, data integrity, internal controls, documentation, automation, and business intelligence all going on at the same time. Oh, and by the way, all the apps are changing daily on how they do that and they're getting updated at the same time. So for it, like I said before, prompt engineering going to be key. Clear, use context. You saw some really good examples earlier. I'll leave, again, this presentation for you. Those are some of my easy prompts. Here's some really good practical stuff to get you started if you're scared. This will get you over the hump. And ultimately, what you have here, one of my favorite before I go is, wrap this up, is this is what I've been using a lot of it for. Okay, just giving me a code. Like, just help me write a macro in Excel. Just help me do something. I'm able to use really natural language and put it together and learn how to use a macro. And if I don't know how to do a macro, right, I can ask it, how do I insert the macro? Followed by, how do I execute the macro and put it all in there? So these are the things that I really, really like to pay attention to because this can help my people. And this is some of the things they need to be able to know to work at my place in the future. I was up here pounding the podium just about 2 or 3 years ago when I was talking to higher education. And what was I saying I needed? Heard it earlier. Does anybody want to guess? What was the talent that I needed most at my place? Huh? Excel, but what else did I need besides Excel? Well, yeah, that too. But what other specialty was I up here asking for? It has something to do with this. Coders. I needed coders because I needed people to sit next to my seasoned CPA, who's my business developer. They're my relationship person. They're the high touch, not the high tech person. I needed a data scientist or a data engineer to sit next to them on every single audit, every single engagement. And I needed them there because I needed them to help do things faster so we could service our clients faster. Do I still need them? I do. I really do. I still need people to understand this. Am I as urgent for it nowadays? Am I going to pound the podium for coders at a CPA firm? Not really, because guess what? I can do it myself. I already have it in power. Now all I got to do is teach a partner on how to use it. But comparing and contrasting. So as you are doing your policies and procedures, use these types of tools. They're really good for that. They're really good for saying this is how we created our user acceptance policy for AI. We went out and said, what should a standard AI be? Okay. Or policy, a user acceptance policy. We put it all together and it responded with this, and this. Okay. Then Brent made his own. Okay. Completely agnostic, like did not use this at all. I made my own, just based on my research, Wall Street Journal articles, everything else that I could find to get my hands on. Then we, of course, had our outside legal department create one. Then we threw all three of them. We just kept battering, ChatGPT with it over and over and over again. And what was the one thing that kept coming out? By the way, mine was just as good as all the other ones, but was the retaliation was the part that we kept missing. It didn't really say it on this result here, but it was, well, what are you going to do if they break your rule, Brent? What are you going to do? How do you answer that question? I'm not sure. I'm not sure still. Am I going to let them go? 10 minutes? Okay. That's the piece that we all struggle with, is what do we do when they break the rule, right? If you're a professor and you say you're going to ban it in your classroom, or you're going to we can't use it for this, but we can use it for that. What's your recourse? What are you going to do when they do it? So that's the trick. I'm not going to give you the answer today, but you know what we did is we put this user acceptance policy right at the beginning of everything you do. So if you're coming in as a new associate at Rehmann, you go through a whole automation and you're reading our handbooks, which that's an also fun story that I went before this meeting to see when our handbook was last updated. It was updated in 2017. And so it's one of those things where I just thought, like, did you know that like our HR could have updated this thing in probably like 12 minutes using, a new policy and doing those types of things. But anyway, what happens though is when they come in as a new associate at Rehmann is they're actually going to sign this agreement. Okay. Which then gives it the same type of power recourse on us as we would with anybody else if they were to use their computer maliciously, if they were to go to sites that we said you couldn't go to, if they were to do something different. So that's how we've solved it in the business world, and that's what we're seeing our clients do as well. They're developing their agreements, their policies and things today. I do not envy the higher education institutes because it's a lot more complicated, I think, for all of you because of all the different areas that you have. But I think it's important to continue down that path and put these things in place. And the only thing that ChatGPT told us that we didn't do good was the recourse. What are you going to do if they break your rule or your policy? And we didn't really still have a good answer for that other than they're signing it. So maybe we can hold it over their head. The playing field is leveled out. It really has. That's where you got the cloud people that they were talking about earlier. They got scared. I've lost my competitive advantage. And honestly, think about it. Have you lost your competitive advantage as a community college or anything like that? I don't know. I can't answer that question to you. I just want you to think about it. Have you? Don't be the first. Please, please, please don't be the first, but don't be the last because you will get left behind. I promise. I don't mean that to be scary because I think I gave you enough information about AI today to not be scared. But this is my moment of in the clouds for me is that it's just don't be the last because I think you're all doing great work and I just don't want to see it happen to anybody here. Make sure your organizations have policies or some method, a vision statement, whatever you're doing, some acceptable use, and make sure you're educating on that, making sure that that just continues to hit. You talked about, well, we didn't want to create a policy because we don't want to update it every 30 minutes when ChatGPT releases a new large language model. Then don't write it in a way that you have to update it every 30 minutes. Write it in a way that's generic, but covers you and protects you and protects your investments and protects your assets, which are your students and your faculty, along with your equipment. And just start experimenting. So I was so happy to see it today. I was really happy to see it being experimenting in course rubrics and syllabuses, and that's just really exciting to see because I think the power is there. It's the future. Like I said, if I had to pull out my crystal ball, I think this is probably the most transformational thing that's happened to us in the last 10, 20 years when it comes to a technology that the end user can use. So we're going to see it get faster. We're going to see it get more applicable. We're going to ultimately see this type of technology at the end of the day. The general ChatGPTs, Copilots, Bards, Geminis of the world, they're going to be there for your generic chatting and, sloppy assistant. I love that term. And so that's what they're going to be. Okay. What's going to be is these tech companies that you need to be in the room where it's happening. Make sure your voice is heard. They are the ones that need to integrate these tools into their tech because that's the ultimate future of where it's going to be. It's not going to be our responsibility to build them. It's going to be their responsibility because if they want to continue to service you as a vendor, they should have these types of things in their cookbook. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. That's Alan Toffler. I want to thank you all for having me today. We left about 1.5 minutes for questions. I did that by design. But also there is my contact information. Happy to come meet with you, talk to your classes, anything like that. We're always involved in the community. And happy to do any of that. So thank you. Questions? I can take what? 2 questions? 1 question? Before your question, were my jokes relevant today? Okay, cool. All right. Just want to check. What's your question?
I believe the UK has put some guardrails out there regarding AI. Do you see anything happening in the United States with regard to I'll say policies or guardrails when it comes to AI?
Yes. I think it's going to be very similar like we've seen with the privacy laws. We've seen where California, they get a privacy law right away, right after the GRDP came out in the UK or in the European Union. I saw it right away. Do I see it in the US? I think we're a little bit slower to adopt. I think about it in a way of what we see with, I'll use auditing standards because it's just what I know. The international auditing standards and the AICPA, the American auditing standards, they did a project. They feel like they've been doing the project for 30 years, converging the standards to try to not have, because companies are global now. If you didn't know, they're like global. And why do we have standards that differentiate between American companies and global companies? And so I think you're going to see this convergence over time around AI, around what you can and can't do. But I think what you're always going to see in the US versus something like the UK is you're going to probably see it get left up to the states in certain areas. And I think you're going to see it get left, you're going to have just those general guardrails. And I think they're going to try to do it to big tech, but big tech is big lobby and big money. So I just don't know how it happens in the US as fast as it would in something like the UK. Did I answer your question? Okay. Any other questions? Those are all crystal balls, not those are Brent's opinions, not Raymond's or his affiliates. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
All right, just a quick reminder, this has been recorded, so we'll get a notification from us and when it's available on our website. I can't thank you all enough, especially sticking all the way to the end here on a Friday afternoon. I'm just blown away by the amazing presentations we had today. So please give it up for our presenters. Any of us are available if you have any questions as it relates to what's happening at the Alliance. We hope someday you participate with our team. We have a good time, and I think we really appreciate each other's feedback and input. So have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.